Aloha, everyone. Happy New Year. We'll start with a special New Year's activity. I invite you to spread out your blanket like I have, though you can't see it. And I'm actually kneeling on an additional blanket because we'll be doing some kneeling today. And that extra blanket just makes it extra supportive. I'm using one of my blocks underneath my hips because it just makes it more accessible. So please take a moment to set up your kneeling position. And I recommend using that for kneeling, but not spreading it out just because it's easier. And have an extra block nearby and your pen and your paper. And then we'll start with some centering. So you don't need to rush, right? Because if you're rushing, it's going to be harder to get centered. Just do what you need to do to find a comfortable kneeling position. And we'll all meet with one hand stacked in the other. And you can close the eyes or gaze at a single point and start to tune into your breath. And just notice if that feels easy or hard today without any judgment. And start to use the breath to direct your focus down into the heart. You can imagine the breath gently tunneling into the heart, helping you drop into this deeper place inside. And with each inhale, let the rib cage expand three-dimensionally. So it's not just expanding in the chest, but also the sides and the back body gently. You can subtly restrict the expansion of the navel, not with too much effort, but just so you feel the breath pressing against the restriction in the navel. Kind of like when we're like this on our belly, you can feel the floor creating that restriction. We just now are creating that restriction with our own muscular strength. And with that gentle restriction as you breathe, notice a sense of that focal point in your abdomen starting to get clearer and clearer. Aloha, Deanna. Happy New Year. You might visualize a point in the center of the navel or feel it very clearly. And this is a deep core strength that happens naturally with the breath. And what I notice when I breathe in this way, that muscles in my neck and shoulders can soften. And maybe you have different areas that are tight. And so I invite you to breathe, building this base of support, and let everything else relax. Aloha, Roseanne. And then from this relaxed place, you can start to let the breath be more natural. And it's okay to release that restriction in the abdomen. Think of a way that you want to feel in 2023. Some obvious ones might be happy, calm, focused. And instead of letting the idea come from the mind, see what bubbles up from this heart or navel space that we've been connecting to. I'll give you an extra moment to just feel with that. What is your wish for 2023? How would you love to feel inside this year? And when you're ready, can grab your pen and paper, and your extra block is a little laptop desk, the first laptop, and write whatever that feeling was, And then take a moment to write an actionable step that you could take towards that feeling. So perhaps if you wrote energized, a step might be, I want to go for a walk after lunch every day, or something like that. So think of at least one realistic thing and make it real by actually saying like once a week or 3 times a week, and let the number be less than maybe the first number that comes to mind so that it's attainable. And after you've written something, fold your paper and draw some sort of symbol. A bonus points if the symbol reflects the feeling that you want, maybe a happy face or a heart or a big shining star, but you can draw anything you want. And then place your intention over to your left hand side, slightly off of the mat. It'll be your drishti later on. You can put your pen to the side. We're not going to write anymore unless you feel inspired, and you can write as much as you want. And we'll begin our class. So if you're following along with the music, hit play on the first track. Make sure it's set to loop, and I'll tell you when to go to the second track. And if it's comfortable, I invite you to let the knees come a little bit wider. I just really like having this wider, almost like triangle of support, but do what feels most comfortable to you. And then place the hands on the lap and take a couple of seated cat-cows, using the inhale to push the shins down, lengthening the spine from the ground up. And then using the exhale to gently hollow the body out. So you're rounding, and push the hands down, and notice how the pushing of the hands allows you to get a little more of that suction of front edge to back edge. And then slow down your movement and flow with your own breath, and let the movement come from the ground up, so that pushing into the hands, pushing into the legs helps inspire the unfolding of the spine. And the next time you round, pause there and take a couple of breaths and notice the different qualities of the inhale and exhale in this rounded form. I really love feeling how the inhale helps me expand more through the back of my body. And the next time you exhale, let your focus drop down into the navel and let go of any grip you have on the next movement we're about to take. Start to push the legs down into the floor, lift the hips, and allow the spine to gently stack. Allow the hands to float. You can parallel the legs a little bit more, and the arms just follow that movement. And then we're going to try that again. So come back down to kneeling. Go into the rounded spine with the exhale, pushing the hands forward, feeling at the center of the abdomen. And then use your inhale to push down into the legs and let the rest of the body respond to that downward push without forcing or even telling it where to go, just seeing what happens. There is a sense of that natural movement that you don't have to create. Do this a couple of times on your own. And each time you come into the rounded shape, this is sort of the moment where you set that foundation of feeling strong and supported. You're setting your intention, but then you let everything be set in motion without too much grip on what it looks like. This is a really great metaphor for our intention setting for the new year. Babaji calls seeing what's possible, and it's always better than how we would create it for ourselves. So have that moment of almost like letting go of expectation and just following the natural flow of the breath and the movement of the body. And then we'll come back down to kneeling. You can leave your blanket where it is just for convenience. Place your blocks over to the side and turn to your left, gently making your way onto the belly just so we can wake up the shoulders and the glutes a little bit before we get into our sequence. So let's start with hands underneath the shoulders, forehead to floor. Take a moment to land and feel held by the earth. And then glide the hands forward, stretching hands and feet long, letting the whole body lengthen, and take a couple of breaths into that lengthened shape. And then ever so gently start to glide the palms back underneath the shoulders, reaching the elbows back, and pause once the hands make it to the shoulders, and notice that sensation of the shoulder blades gently drawing down the back and how that energizes the spine so you can lengthen and hover the head. Keep the gaze down so that there's no pinching in the back of the neck. And then let's repeat that, releasing down, gliding hands forward, stretching long, and then gliding the hands back, waking up the back body, floating the heart and head. Take one more on your own. And then set the head down. The arms can do whatever is comfortable, so they can stay where they are or they can stack and elbows can come wide. We're going to bring some attention down into the hips and the legs. So take a moment to reach the tailbone straight back. And when you do this, you might feel a little bit of integration and awareness building at the center. And then keep your pelvis level in this way as you start to reach the right foot back and slightly up. And it should feel like it's hard to lift, like you can't lift it too high, and then set it down. Try the other leg and repeat this a few times, trying to feel the muscles that have to wake up to lift the leg without moving the pelvis. For me, I feel the work in my glutes at the back of the hip. If you don't feel that, you can get a little more dramatic by tucking the tailbone to restrict the movement of the pelvis, but I prefer a gentler, more neutral approach if you can find it. One more time to each side, and then relax completely. As you relax, the heels might fall out slightly, let the low back soften, and if it feels okay, you can imagine you're like wagging your tail a little bit. This helps me release my SI joint and my lumbar vertebra. And then come to center, let yourself relax. Take a moment to set that seed of intention either into the heart or into the navel of investing in that feeling that you want to experience this year. And then bring the hands underneath the shoulders and push into them to send the hips back to the heels. Make sure the blocks are nearby. You can bring them onto the mat just so they're more convenient, and then press all the way back to Bhaktasana. Push down into the shins and start to round forward and up into cat pose, and notice that same hollow quality that we found in kneeling, where you can push down into the shins and down into the palms and feel a gentle suction of the front edge of the body lifting and puffing up the back edge of the body. Keep that sense of rounding as the hips reach towards the heels, but don't make it all the way. You might even feel the work increase a little bit at your center. And then push down into the shins so you can slowly roll forward all the way into cat with shoulders over wrists. From this point, start to drag the hands back without actually moving them. Lengthen the heart forward into cow pose. And then try this a couple of times, pushing into the hands to round, send the hips back, not quite touching, so there's a lot more activity here than a Bhaktasana. And then push down into the shins, reversing that motion, being kind of slow and dramatic as the impulse signals for the spine to start to lengthen. Take one more on your own. And then the next time you're forward in your cow pose, take a little extra weight in the left knee, and without moving the pelvis at all, start to glide the right foot back as if the rest of the body doesn't know that the right leg is moving. And then inhale, pull the knee back underneath you, and do this a couple of times. Moving on the exhale. It's fine to move on the inhale as well. Just choose one part of the breath. Start to feel what muscles work to stabilize as that right leg almost like disappears behind you. And the next time the leg is behind you, make any adjustments so the hands and knee, lower your blocks to the lowest height and bring your hands up on the blocks. They can be wherever is comfortable. If you have sensitive wrists, sometimes having the hands forward of the blocks so the fingers curl over the edge can take some of the flexion out of the wrist, and that can feel nice, so feel free to try that. Mom, bring the blocks further back so they're right underneath your shoulders and not ahead of you, so just like a tabletop. So we're in tabletop, hands are on the blocks, and the right leg is still extended. So now imagine you're still on the floor and your pelvis is neutral, and we'll do that exact same leg lifting that we did on the floor. So start to hover the back leg and try to keep the pelvis steady. So it doesn't matter how high the leg lifts, but you want to feel almost that localized work. A good clue that you're doing it right is that the left hip will start to warm because it's working so hard to stabilize you. We're going to massage that out in 1 second. Take one more lift. You can pause, lengthen the space from the crown of the head to the heel. And then set the toes of the right foot down, flex them under. Shift the weight into the right hand and draw a big circle. Left hand forward, up and back. Take a couple of circles here just to massage out the left side of the body, especially that left hip. And the next time the hand comes down to the block, tuck both sets of toes underneath, hover the left knee, and start to push into the hands to lift the hips up and back into a staggered down dog. I love doing down dog with my hands on blocks because I find that there's a lot more strength in the legs and it feels so nice and light in the arms. You can take some sways through the hips, shifting the weight from foot to foot. And then we'll do that sequence one more time. So lower the left knee down, coming to your three-legged table. Start to pulse the right leg up without moving the pelvis, creating that warmth in the left hip or wherever you feel it. And then bring the right toes down, shift the weight into the right hand. 1 or 2 big circles. And then touch the hand to the block, tuck the left toes under, lift the hips up and back, and take a couple of your sways or just hold steady and use the blocks to help lift and reach the hips long, letting the spine lengthen, letting the armpits stretch. And then lower left knee down, bring right knee into meet. And if it's comfortable, you can slide the blocks forward just a little bit and melt into Bhaktasana with the hands on the blocks. That's going to increase the stretch on the arms. So if it feels like too much, just slide the hands off the blocks. That's fine. And breathe into the heart. Breathe into the back body. And then imagine your hands are like little I'm going to say crabs because they're cuter than spiders. And let them gently crawl in towards the head and then in towards the shoulders so you have a little extra support, and then push into the fingertips so you slowly come to seated on the heels. Walk the hands all the way into the thighs, and we're going to just do one of those movements from the beginning of class where you round the spine, push down into the shins and the fingertips. Feel how the exhale allows the body to hollow out. And then push down into the shins, send the hips forward, and let the progression travel up the spine without too much effort. And the hands just follow, and you've totally let go. You're trusting the flow through the body. And then we'll bring the hands back to the blocks. And at the risk of being slightly asymmetrical, we'll change to the second track for the second side of our sequence. Oh, what track were you playing? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, we had the wrong track here, so maybe it was working for you where you were, but it wasn't working for me. So take a moment to find your neutral table and then start to glide the left foot back this time. And then bring it back in, and if you want to sync it with the breath, it's up to you whether the movement comes on an inhale. That's going to help create that pressurized system in the core, and if it comes on the exhale, that can help create a little extra length in the psoas. So it's all good. And the next time the leg comes behind you, pause there. Make sure you feel supported with the limbs that are touching the earth. And then we play with those leg lifts without tipping the pelvis, right? So resist any urge to lift the leg high. If you're feeling this in your low back, it means you're tipping the pelvis. I feel like it took me so long to figure out how to activate the muscles here. And the real secret is to not lift the leg as high, to release that sense of doership, and to really allow the body to do its thing without the mind getting in the way. Take one more, and then tuck the left toes under, shift the weight into the left hand, big circle, right hand goes forward, up and back. Take a couple of those and do anything with the left hand that helps the wrist feel comfortable. Keep a little bend in that elbow. And then the next time the right hand comes down, tuck both sets of toes under, lift the hips into the staggered down dog. Take a couple of sways. And then lower the right knee down so we can prepare to do it again. So we start with the leg lifts. Take your time. You can start to visualize that long line from the heel up to the crown. Try to feel what the pelvis and the spine are doing. And remember, less is more. And I feel like that's such a good lesson for our New Year's resolutions. We don't have to force these things to happen. We just set ourselves in the right direction and then take little steps. Maybe one thing a day, one breath a day. And the next time the toes come down, tuck both sets of toes under, shift the weight into the left hand, draw your circle. And then bring the right hand to the block, hover the knees, push into the hands to send the hips up and back. You can hold steady here or take some gentle sways. And then lower the right knee down, lower the left knee down. This time, let's turn the blocks up to the medium height. So it's the skinniest edge is going to be pointed upward, and they're a little bit higher. Press the hips back to the heels. Take one moment in Bhaktasana, and then crabby hands start to crawl back towards the thighs. Just taking one moment to set our intention with that rounding and inward focus, and then let go of it and sort of trust the progression as you push down into the shins, letting the spine and arms flow upward. And then bring the hands to the blocks, and we'll upgrade our waving vinyasa now with slightly higher blocks. So push into the hands, sending the hips back towards the heels. Start to round the spine, feeling that sense of hollowness. And then push down into the shins, slowly waving forward. Tuck the toes under and start to kick into the big toes so you have a little bit more acceleration through the hips. The hips can lower a little bit this time and bend the elbow, almost like a tricep dip here, or a nice easy chaturanga. Don't go too far. And then with that little bend of the elbows, traction the hands back, let the spine lengthen, nice, and find as even and smooth of an upward facing dog as you can. And then let's try that again. So rounding back, hips towards the heels, push into the big toes. That's the impulse that sends the spine forward. Stay rounded forward, suctioning front edge of body to back edge. And then as you come forward, the hips lower, soft elbows, and traction the hands back to get as much length as possible. This time, just come back to tabletop. Step your right foot forward and take a moment to shift the weight into the right foot and then into the left knee. And then let that movement get smaller and smaller until you find the place where there's equal weight in both of those points. Pause there. Take a breath and push down into the hands to start to round the spine, hollow body, just like we've been practicing. But then lift the back knee and let that allow you to increase the rounding in the spine more at the low back. We don't want to round too much in the upper back. It's already pretty rounded. And then gently lower the back knee, traction the hands back to lengthen the spine. You can think neutral or slight extension, but not as dramatic as up dog. And then we'll repeat that. So use the exhale to lift the back knee and round the spine. And use the inhale, push into the ball of the back foot, rolling forward, set the knee down, lengthen the spine. Let's do one more. And then let's meet in Parsvottanasana. So that's when the back knee's lifted and the spine is rounded. And start to hop that back foot. Get light on that back foot so you can start to step it forward towards the front edge of where your blanket was. Bend both knees, sway the hips a little bit, and start to shift the weight into the back foot so you feel really stable. Walk the hands up the legs, push down into the thighs to slowly roll up, kind of like we practice kneeling. And then, Satyam, I don't know if you want to adjust the camera, thanks. And then allow the spine and arms to unfold. You can take a quarter turn towards me just so it's a little easier to follow. Shift the weight into the front foot and use your inhale to lift the knee as the hands lower. Exhale, reach the foot forward as the arms reach out. And then bend the right knee a little bit so you get really bouncy and you feel stable. Nice. And then dramatic moment, you have to step over your blocks. Start to sweep the left foot back as you sweep the arms forward towards a dancer-like shape, but without any bind. So it's all in the strength that we've been cultivating through that back hip. Let's repeat that again. So the inhale draws the knee forward and the arms down. Exhale, reach out, kicking through the heel, and then big dramatic inhale, bend the right knee and start to glide the left foot back, opening the front of the left hip. Set the left toes down, turn slightly so those blocks are right there for you again, and start to melt over the front leg. The hands can stay on the thighs or go down to the blocks, and let's actually lift the blocks to the highest height now. From here, start to sway the hips from side to side. And then bend the front knee. For me, I have to walk my blocks a little ahead of where they were so they're in front of the foot. Start to shift the weight into the front foot. Pay attention to your neutral pelvis and play with hovering the back leg just like we've been practicing in different positions. Take a few pulses here. And then the next time the toes come down, shift the weight into the left hand, bend the right knee generously and start to circle the right hand forward, up, and back. And try to notice how this movement can offer some relief in that right hip and right leg. And the next time the right hand comes down, step back to a plank on high blocks and start to push into the hands to send the hips up and back. You might need to walk the blocks in a little bit, but this should feel like a really nice, easy down dog. Like your arms are so strong and your body is so light. Start to lift the heels, round the spine like we've been practicing, and slowly roll forward into a puffy plank with the hands, with the shoulders over the blocks, and then lower the knees down, traction the hands back, and see if you can lengthen through the spine for a weightless up dog. It should feel like your spine can effortlessly reach forward as the hips lower forward, bend the elbows a little bit. And then press back to just tabletop, and we'll do the second side. So now the left foot comes forward. Start to push down into the blocks, into the back knee. If you want to slide back onto your blanket, I sort of got off of my extra cushioning. So find your blanket for the back knee, and then start to hollow out the spine. Take a breath into the navel. Relax anything that's gripping. And then play with tucking back toes under and lifting the back knee. The front leg can straighten any amount. Take one more push down into the hands to round, and then slowly lower the back knee and use your inhale to melt the hips and traction through the blocks to lengthen the spine, that effortless unfolding. And then we repeat. So round the spine, lift the back knee, lengthen the front leg for Parsvottanasana. You can exhale into that movement and then slowly inhale, lower the back knee, bend the front knee, and let the spine unfold. And you're going to pulse here a couple times on your own. And I recommend letting the movement come from the legs and letting the spine follow, and not really being concerned with how deep of a forward fold or back bend, but trying to connect to that sense of allowing. And knowing that your body knows exactly where to go if you can get out of the way. And the next time you're rounded forward, pause there, bend the back knee, start to get light on that back foot. See if you can kick it a couple of times, shifting the weight forward into the front foot, and then eventually stepping the right foot forward. Shift a little extra weight into the back foot so you feel really stable and the low back feels supported, and then push down into both feet to slowly rise up, hollow belly. And then the spine stacks, arms float just like we've been practicing. And we go into the balance sequence. And hopefully you can turn to face me if it's easier, or you can stay where you are if you remember it. We'll inhale, shift forward, and hover the right leg this time. And then slow exhale, kick out through the right heel and reach out through the arms. Bend the left knee and use your inhale to sweep the right leg back as the arms reach forward, getting as long as possible. Feel that same muscle in the back of the hip working and not the low back. And then we repeat. So inhale, drag hands down and knee forward. Exhale, kick through the heel, reach out. And inhale, soften the left knee as you sweep the leg back and the arms forward. Take one extra breath in this like freedom movement of dancer, and then set the toes down behind you and gently melt the hands down the legs until you can bring them to the blocks. You can bend the knees as deeply as you need to, and then take some sways through the hips. When you feel ready, and there's no need to rush, especially if the left leg needs a longer break, you can shift the weight into the front foot, neutralize the pelvis, and play with hovering that back foot. Take a couple of pulses. Notice the warmth being created in the standing legs, stabilizing the pelvis. The next time the right toes come down, shift the weight into the right hand, circle the left hand forward, up, and back. And take a couple of moments here. If you want to, you can play with extending the left leg as the arms circle, but you don't have to. And the next time the left hand comes down, step back to plank pose. Start to push into the hands, heading into our weightless down dog. Move where the blocks are. If it doesn't feel easy, walk the blocks closer to you. Soften through the knees. And then start to lift the heels and round the spine and push down into the balls of the feet. And notice if that helps you get more of that hollowing. Push down into the hands so you come forward. Set the knees down. You might need to walk the blocks forward slightly so you have enough space to gently send the hips forward and allow the spine to unfurl. It should feel, there shouldn't be any pressure in your low back here. So just check in with that. Can even help to wag the tail a little bit. If you can't wag the tail, it means you might be a little stuck in the low back. And then let's send the hips back to the heels. You can keep the hands on the blocks at the highest height, or you can lower the blocks, which is what I'm doing, and take a moment to pause and rest and recenter, coming back to your intention. And just like we've been practicing in our poses, see if you can feel that center point of your intention. And imagine just like planting it like a seed and letting go of it, not gripping it, not clinging to it. Push down into the knees, start to crab walk the hands onto the thighs, round the spine, and then push down to the shins, slowly rolling up. This time as the hands float up and overhead, take the right hand and add a nice easy spiral. The hips can lower, and we'll pause, and then we'll repeat that from center, rounding the spine, and then inhaling up and letting the left hand circle over to the left, and then lowering the hips down into a modified Bharadvajasana. And then rise all the way up. Set your blocks up to the highest height and step your right foot forward. Make some gentle circles with the pelvis, and then circle the opposite direction. Try to keep the big toe anchored. Notice if that's hard. Anchoring the big toe is going to help with balance. And then tuck the back toes under and start to push down into the blocks to round the spine. As you're ready, lift the back knee. Start to play with lengthening the front leg and push into the blocks to lengthen not just the spine, but all the way down through the back of the left leg. And then bend the right knee, shift the weight forward, and start to bounce the back foot, bringing it up a little closer. You can play with those leg lifts from before. Take a couple of leg lifts. And then let the back leg land a little bit closer to you so we can transition up to standing like we did before, and move really slowly here. Push down into the feet and notice how little you can do to force this, and how just pushing into the feet allows the body to come up effortlessly. And we'll come into that balancing sequence. So shift the weight into the right foot. Inhale, elbows down, left knee lifts. Exhale, kick into the heel, reach out, and then big dramatic inhale, bend the right knee and sweep the leg behind you as you reach forward. This time, pause in your dancer. We've done a lot of prep for Virabhadrasana 3, so take some bounces in the right knee. And then start to play with kicking the left leg back and sweeping the arms back. You can stay here as long as you want, and if that's not very long, you can lower the back toes down and bring the hands to the block at any time. So play with what the body is craving and desiring. And then when you're ready to release the back, Foot comes down, the hands come to the block. Gentle sway with the hips. And then gently lower the back knee. Hopefully it's landing towards the blanket. Push down into the back knee to slowly stack one vertebra at a time to a nice big opening. Push down into the left knee so that you start to sway slightly to the right. If it feels good, you can reach the right arm back towards the left heel. Keep lengthening up with the left hand. So it's more an experience of lift. And then release the hands down to the blocks. Step the right foot back. And it's up to you. You can take a rest in Bhaktasana or take one of our anti-gravity waving vinyasas, whatever the body is craving. If you want a little extra, you can add that tricep dip at the top. And then without rushing, we'll eventually meet in tabletop, but take your time enjoying where you are. And we'll do the second side. So shift the weight into the right knee, step the left foot forward this time. Start to push down into the back knee, the front foot, and the blocks to gently round the spine from the bottom. Feel the shoulder blades slide wide, like there's more room for your heart to expand. Stay long through the back of the neck. And then start to lift the back knee and straighten the front leg, letting the spine lengthen. Take a couple of breaths here. Stay soft. Notice if you're pushing into an end range and see if you can release that tendency and just be okay being a little softer. And then we bend into the front knee, shift the weight into the front foot, and start to play with hovering the back leg. As the back leg lifts, see if you can lengthen through the spine, making a connection from the leg all the way up to the crown of the head. And then let the back leg step a little closer to you. Bend both knees so you're in a little crouch. Equal weight in both feet. Push down into the feet, either with a straight spine or that nice curve we've been practicing. Slowly come all the way up. Let the arms follow. Find a drishti. You can gaze at the image that you drew on your intention. Slightly shift the weight into the left foot and use your next inhale to lift right knee and draw the elbows down. Exhale, kick the heel forward, stretch the arms back. And then inhale, bend the left knee, sweep the right foot back, and reach the arms forward. Pause in dancer pose. Push into the leg. Lengthen through the spine as you kick back through the leg. And then we'll do that one more time, adding in our Vira 3. So inhale up to crane pose. Exhale, kick through heel, reach out. And then bend the left knee. Next inhale, sweep the leg back. See how long you can make the spine. See if you can reach the hands up and the foot back to get a little bit longer. And then get bouncy in that left leg and play with sweeping the hands back as you shift forward. Reach back through the heel. Try to have awareness of where the pelvis is and see if you can use that same leg lifting action we've practiced so many times to feel really light here. Whenever you're ready, set the back toes down, lower the hands to the blocks, and gently sway your hips from side to side. Shift the weight into the right hand, bend the left knee a little bit, and circle the left fingertips forward, up, and back. And then lower the left hand to the block, step back to plank, and it's up to you. You can take your resting pose with the extra stretch, or take a weightless down dog, roll. Then you can always change the level of the blocks to be as comfortable as possible for your spine. And then take your time, but let's all meet in our resting pose. But this time circle the arms behind you. Lift the hips and grab the opposite wrist with opposite hand underneath the hips, and then set your hips down on top of the arms to help release the shoulders. Take a couple natural breaths into the neck and shoulders and spine. Release the hands. Push down into the shins to slowly roll up and pause at kneeling. You can go ahead 2 tracks to the 4th track. Grab some water. I apologize I didn't offer that sooner, so I hope that you have done what you needed to do. And then pause with the hands stacked, just like we had at the beginning of class. If you liked having a block underneath the hips, you're welcome to grab that. And just sink down into the heart, or maybe all the way down into the navel, whatever feels most natural to you. And take a moment to visualize yourself in whatever state you wrote on your intention card. And try to make it so real that you can actually feel what it would be like right now. Happy, calm, safe, supported, clear, whatever it was for you. And try to be as relaxed as possible so that the visualization isn't something that you're creating with effort, but it's almost like you're just revealing it, like you're just polishing a glass. And as you polish it, that natural shiny state is revealed. We'll just take a couple more breaths with that visualization, or maybe it's even starting to be more than that. And then let it go, almost like you're holding onto a rope and you could just gently open your hand and feel that sense of freedom, kind of like that from the dancer pose feeling. And sit the hips to one side and then kick your legs out in front of you. At this point you can move your blocks off to the side. I already had my blanket there, but if you don't, you're welcome to grab a blanket for underneath the hips if that would feel nice and supportive. And then bend the knees. Bring the hands to the thighs and push into the hands just like we've been practicing, to just find that sense of hollow body in a really gentle way. Make sure the neck is an extension of the spine here, so there's just a nice even smooth curve from the sits bones to the crown of the head. And take a couple of breaths. And then push into the heels. That's the impulse that's going to help you sit up straight. As you push into the heels, allow the spine to just wave up. Allow the hands to follow, just like we've been practicing. And then allow the spine to drape over the legs. If it feels good, the knees can come out to the side, and we'll repeat that. So kick into the legs. At this point, the heels can glide forward, and then allow that to send the impulse up the spine so you can roll up. And then drag the heels back. Notice how that helps you lengthen the spine. The knees can come out if that feels good. And you drape the spine over. And then you kick. And let this be as smooth as possible. Let go of any sense of trying to get towards the legs or trying to sit up straight. Instead, notice how those little movements of the kicking and pulling with the heels trigger the response from the whole rest of the body. Connect more deeply with the breath flow. There's no right or wrong here. I find that I'm exhaling forward and inhaling up, but it doesn't matter as long as you're breathing naturally. If at any time you would like to pause anywhere, you're welcome to. Sometimes it feels good to pause in the fold, bringing the fingertips to the floor and gently rocking from side to side, or even walking the hands gently from side to side so you get a little bit of lateral flexion through the spine. We've done a lot of spiraling today, so you could even reach one hand forward, up and back as we practiced in a few different movements. There's no right or wrong. If you took something asymmetrical, take a moment to balance out sides. And then pause one last moment at center and take your time. Really milk the moment coming upward, but start to drive the heels forward and feel that sense of allowing the movement to unfold without any attachment. When you land at the top, imagine yourself just like an empty vessel. Take a couple of breaths here. And then you can pause your music. You can start to prepare for the final resting pose by dimming the lights, getting any warm layers, adding any last poses that your body is craving. And full disclosure, because we're all friends here, when we were in our forward fold, I was like, okay, how can we use our 2 blocks and our blanket for a cool restorative pose? So I want to try it really quickly before I tell you to do it. But we were looking at the clouds today, and someone said, oh, they kind of look like Stonehenge. So I was thinking maybe we could create our own little Stonehenge to get some inversion, and I just want to see. Oh yeah, this feels real great. Okay, so you're welcome to try this by stacking your blocks at any height that you want and then draping your blanket over them. If you have a bolster, that would work too. And I'm just figuring out where the most comfortable part to land on here. I like it at the top of my calf, so it's towards the crook of my knee, kind of like where you would put your blanket for Shavasana anyway. And this is just going to increase, or it's going to give you an inversion as you rest. And I will cue to come out of it into Shavasana, but if you love it, it is safe to rest in an inversion. And so take your time getting comfortable, wiggling around to make sure the pressure on the calves is okay. I'm finding that I'm scooting my hips a little bit closer to the props so that they're further up my calf. And wiggle the tailbone a little bit so the low back relaxes. Check in with the shoulders, letting them glide around. You can even take a moment to stretch the arms overhead and point through the toes. And then eventually find a comfortable way to rest here. And at this point, I invite you to let go of your intention completely. It's wonderful to have goals and wishes and think it is helpful in our growth. It's also really important to find space and to trust that if we're headed in the right direction, if we're investing in ourselves and our practice, everything will unfold as it needs to. And so you can deposit your intention like a seed in your heart, and then imagine that each breath is just nourishing your highest potential. And try closing the mouth, letting tongue rest on the palate. And just let yourself relax completely. So you're welcome to keep the legs elevated. You're also welcome to start to adjust towards Shavasana, removing the blocks from underneath the blanket. If you need a little counter pose after that movement, you can place the feet on your blanket with the blocks off to the side and just gently lift the hips in a nice, easy bridge pose to extend the hips after that gentle flexion, and then melt one vertebra down at a time as if you're entering into the earth. Just feel that extra grounding in the pelvis and the sacrum land. And then you can extend your legs. Make any adjustments with your props. And the real magic of Shavasana happens when we're able to stay conscious. And so try to bring your focus down into your heart, and with as little effort as possible, keep your attention there. And let the breath be natural, let the body be soft. And we'll consciously rest for the next 10 minutes or so. Before you make any movements, imagine the edges of your skin crystallizing like a snake about to molt a layer of their skin. Maybe you can even feel that sense of limitation or bondage. And then as it feels right for you and you breathe and begin to move, imagine leaving that crystallization behind, literally shedding that layer of your being. And as you wiggle the fingers and stretch wider than that space, notice any sense of lightness or freedom or newness. And take your time and enjoy the quiet space that Shavasana helps us sink into, and see if you can stay attuned to this deeper awareness and presence that's possible when we let go of the mind and we let go of the small self. Take your time, but start evolving towards a seated position and take the scenic route. Add anything on along the way. Explore any gentle movements that feel good, and we'll eventually all meet at seated. And prop yourself up and make sure to find a comfortable seated position. I thought it would be fun to do a little chanting together for the new year. And so we're going to chant the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. Probably heard this mantra before. It's the mantra of Chen Rizig, who is the Buddha of compassion, and he's always painted with a blue gem between his hands, and this is the wish-fulfilling jewel. So as we chant this mantra, what I love so much about chanting is it's not about us, and it's not about our minds and our energies, but really connecting to the highest form of energy and letting it become us, or letting us become that. So I invite you to join me in this chant, or to just listen if that's more comfortable. It's Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. mani padme hum. Om 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 mani padme hum. You can let the eyes close and the focus drop to the center point of the heart, or deeper down to the center point of the navel. Notice how relaxed your physical form is, and perhaps how much easier it is to feel the breath and feel the awareness deep, deep inside. Imagine the breath is the form that will help you achieve whatever it was that you wished for in the new year. And just by allowing the most natural, fluid breath to come in and out consciously, you're gradually getting closer to that goal. Feel any sense of reverence for the breath, knowing that it can help you achieve clarity and calmness and higher states of being. And see if you can let go of everything else and just be with the breath and be nourished by it so deeply. Happy New Year, everybody. Namaste. I ended a couple minutes early. This is totally optional, but in case anyone wants to share what their wish is, you can type it in the chat box. You can unmute and say it, or you can pass. I'll go first so that I make it less scary. My goal is to be more happy. And then after I wrote that, I was like, oh, what is an actionable step to being more happy? That's actually kind of hard. So I wrote, I'm going to try to do more mantra when I'm worrying or complaining or being negative. I'm going to try to recognize that and default to doing mantra instead of letting all those things come out of my mouth. So that's my goal. If anybody else wants to share, you're more than welcome to. I can see that Dana's typing.